Hello chess friends and welcome to the Chess channel and welcome back to our Queen Gambit Decline series. So in this series we're following this very nice opening from White's and from Black's perspective, and today we're continuing again with our Queen's Gambit Decline series and the so-called Semi-Tarrasch Defense. The Semi-Tarrasch Defense we have explained so far in 4 videos. First we have the introduction video, part 2, part 3 and so on, and today again we're continuing with this very nice opening but with a different slide line in which Black is not retaking with the knight in the center of the board. Black is trying c takes d4 ideas in order to simplify the game by trading off some more pawns in the center of the board. I'll explain of course what's all about. So as I said, we have now a great Stockfish game with the black pieces, but also a great game by Lajos Portisch back from 1984, in which Lajos Portisch faced a strong international master but managed to outplay him with really brilliant ideas in the Semi-Tarrasch Defense. So let's check out again what is now the Semi-Tarrasch Defense, what is of course the Queen's Gambit Decline, and what is now our new line and what is the new Black's approach in the continuation of the game. So we have now d4 here, of course, as the first move. We have d5, c4, the Queen's Gambit. After move e6 we have the Queen's Gambit Decline, and after move knight to c3, knight to f6 and knight to f3 we have reached now the 3 knights variation of the Queen's Gambit Decline. Now comes the Semi-Tarrasch move, which is of course the move c5. And okay, after move c takes d5 we have analyzed now recently this continuation, knight to d5, then the game led into this e4, knight takes c3, b takes c3, c takes d4, c takes d4 and bishop to d4. So we have explained in our first 4 videos of the series these types of lines, but today we're analyzing a different approach. After move c takes d5, here Black can also play a very nice simplification idea. Here Black can play simply the move c takes d4. And please, as I said, if you want to really know more about the Semi-Tarrasch Defense, please check out my previous analysis, because in that videos we have explained really the most important strategical and tactical elements of this opening. So after move c takes d4 the game transposes now into new structures, because after move knight to d4 we have now of course knight to d5. We don't want to take with the pawn because we have said we don't want to get an isolated pawn. You can of course take, it's not a losing game immediately because you have played e takes d5, but I simply like this idea, knight to d5, and if knight to d5 happens we'll simply recapture again with the queen. We don't want to recapture with the pawn, although e takes d5 of course would liberate the long diagonal for the light square bishop, but still you want to have a healthy pawn structure. You don't want to have a messed up pawn structure in an early stage of the game. So that's why here after move knight to d5 you can face now this idea by White, and this is now our cornerstone position. This is now the position that we're studying because there is an obvious threat that can happen to you. The most important thing is to realize is this tactical idea, knight to d5. Let's see possible continuations here in these types of ideas. So after move knight to d5, you see we can face maybe this positional problem. You can play here e takes d5, and the problem is now you can face this idea, queen to d5, because if you take queen to d5 then of course here you get knight to c7 and White has gained the pawn. So that's why this is not something that you should do. After move queen to d5 that you can face here, as I said, we're analyzing first the great gameplay by Suba against Lajos Portisch. Here Lajos Portisch played with the black pieces, and I think he found great ways how to escape from this tactical ideas of White. So queen to d5 seems like an annoying idea that you can face in these lines, but you should not worry so much, because even if you put now this position into your engine at home, and if you analyze maybe some more games, you see that there are many games that are simply won by Black and many drawish games. So it's not such a good line for White, because White is now simply developing problems. We can notice in these ideas e3 has to be played further, bishop to e2 or bishop to d3 or wherever you want to go with your bishop, and then you can have to play kingside castling. So you're at least 3 more moves far away from fully development. Meanwhile Black is of course slightly faster when it comes to king security. Bishop to b4 and kingside castling will happen immediately, so that's why Black can secure the king immediately. Of course, white is up a pawn, but that's not, I think, such a huge problem here. So here, of course, bishop to b4 immediately. That's the line that you should memorize here. Of course, Lajos Portisch played this very aggressive approach. Knight to c3 is, of course, not an option because we can play, say, simply play queen to d5 or bishop to c3 followed with queen to d5. So that's not an option. So that's why here bishop to d2 has to be played. And now you don't want to trade off the queens. We're playing simply here queen to e7. Now, if you want to take, of course, then it's not so good. Queen to b4 will happen, and you cannot cover with the knight. Then you lose also this pawn. So it's simply completely winning here game for black. So after move queen to e7, we had now the move knight to c3 by Mikhail Suba, here casting, and you hope you realize I think this position is a great compensation for black, although black is down the whole pawn. But you see now bishop to e6, bishop to g4 will happen, rook from a to d8 or rook from f to d8, rook to e8, rook to d8, rook to c8 is a possibility. So you get all of your pieces simply on the best squares for the compensation of one pawn. I think it's simply a great position here for black. So after move bishop to g5 was played by white, we have queen to c7 staying very active into the game with the queen. We have now e3, bishop to e6, getting a new tempo against the queen. We have queen to d2, queen to a5, we have bishop to h4, and here Lajos Portisch played a very aggressive move g5, which wasn't maybe the best of moves when it comes to computer evaluations, but it's a great move still because we're keeping our opponent occupied, and that's the beauty of attacking chess. Whenever you have here an advantage in development, then you should continue the pressure. You have to be active, you have to play active moves, you have to play threatening moves, and that's exactly what Lajos Portisch is doing. Play simply very actively here with this pawns, with this rooks now into the game, because here rook from f to d8 was played, of course, now creating a new tempo against the queen. So here we have queen to c2, bishop takes c3, we have now b takes c3, and now a great move here by Lajos Portisch, again knight to b4. If you of course take, we have here queen to b4 as an opportunity. You can recover, of course, with the king to e2, and then rook from a to c8 in simply tactical lost game. Even bishop to c4, bishop to g4 are opportunities. Rook to d2. So as I said, white is simply tactical lost. So here the continuation after move knight to b4, we have now queen to e4, but now again a brilliant move by Lajos Portisch, knight to a2 with preparations, of course, to play queen to c3. Here we have queen to b4, and maybe you can pause now the video and find out the best next move for black. Of course, let me show this one. Knight to b4 is of course an opportunity, and after rook to a5, knight to c2 is of course still a better position for black. But there is really a brilliant move. Maybe you can pause the video and see the best continuation here for black. It's really a sick move. It's really a brilliant move that Lajos Portisch of course saw, and his opponent resigned afterwards immediately. Okay. Okay, this is now the brilliant tactic. We have now the move rook to d1. Rook to d1 is really great because here's the thing that happens after rook to d1. Of course, now this idea after knight to b4 is not working anymore. You don't have anymore your rook that is attacking the queen, and the problem is now wherever you go with your king, if you take on d1 or if you play on e2, the same tactic will happen, because then you get knight to c3 comes with a check, and you can maybe go this way. But here after queen to b4, you don't have to lose your queen. That's the beauty of this tactical shot, rook to d1, and as I said, here Lajos Portisch's opponent resigned immediately. So let's go back. Let's see this possible continuation. This was now our cornerstone position. So as I said, after move knight to d5, here e takes d5 can happen, but don't worry, queen to d5, if that happens, it's not a problem. Bishop to b4, bishop to d2, but now queen to e7. That's the main tactic that you should memorize, the main line of this sideline of the Semi-Tarrasch defense. Now knight to c3 casting, and okay, bishop to e6 will happen, rook to e8, rook to d8. So this is something that you have to memorize. I think from this point on, you have a really comfortable game. although you're down a pawn. But okay, let's see now Stockfish game. Here Stockfish played against another engine laser. It was, I think, again a brilliant game. Here we have again this same position. The move order was a little bit different, but now the same position happened. Again, we have now e4. e4 can be also an opportunity to maybe get some kind of an attack on the d file, but again, you should not worry so much, because here the evaluation is also already slightly better for black. It's really wild, but actually it's black that is taking over now in the game, although seemingly it seems so that white will mess up here the casting privilege here of black, but that's actually what we want here to get. So we have now analyzed this continuation after knight to d5 and e takes d5 and queen to d5. Now we're analyzing also this idea e4. These are not the best of lines for white. In the continuation of our series, we'll also analyze different possibilities for white and for black. So here after move e4, knight to c3 is the best move, because here after queen to d8, king to d8, and now after knight to c3, bishop to c5. We're simply playing now normal developing moves. We have bishop to f4, and now king to e7. And when we stop and evaluate now the position, we have to say immediately that black is slightly better because of one particular thing, because black's king is much closer to the center, and if this game again reaches the endgame stage, black's king will be already somewhere here, and then maybe after king to e5 we can already get our king very centralized. So in a potential endgame battle, when you of course want to have your king in the center of the board, black would be slightly faster to accomplish that. So that's why after trades of queens, the game basically is transposing more and more into the endgame stage. So that's why here already king to e7, as I said, you're much closer to the center of the board. So rook to d1, we have now b6, we have knight to a4 attacking the bishop, bishop to b4, knight to c3, and after bishop to b7 we have now a3. But now a brilliant move by Stockfish. Here bishop takes c3, and after b takes c3 that was played by Laser. We can notice now mission accomplished. I think we have now several weaknesses, and they are really easy to attack. First of all, we have the e4 weakness, and the other thing also, of course, we have now two idolated pawns, which are of course clear targets for Stockfish in the continuation of the game. We can now use also this idea is knight to a5, and then maybe try to somehow cement our knight here on c4. So far it's not possible because the bishop is covering this square. But here is also very important thing to notice: you should not trade, for instance, your knight for this light square bishop. Then the game reaches a position in which we have opposite colored bishops, and when that happens, it's basically a drawish position. So that's why I think we'll understand now more and more this new moves that were played by Stockfish. Here rook to d8, of course competing on the d file, because there is maybe the threat to play bishop to d6. Here we have f3, e5, kicking with the bishop. Now f6, fixing the pawn structure on dark squares, because we have given up our dark square bishop for the knight here on c3. Now it's time to have a great protection of that squares, because whenever you give up your bishop for a knight or something, then you have to cover your squares that this bishop covers. So it means now you see after black gave up the dark square bishop, now black has many pawns on dark squares. So great positional game here by Stockfish. So bishop to b5, this is now already a positional threat to go into drawish position, because after, let's see, possible continue to play a bad move for black, bishop takes c6, bishop takes c6 simplifies the game, I think, here too much, and the game will probably reach the endgame stage in which we have opposite colored bishops. So as I said, although black is still slightly better, black doesn't have worries here in the continuation of the game, but still this is not something that you should allow. We want to stay now with many pieces on the board, because we want to exploit simply these weaknesses, these two isolated pawns. So after move bishop to b5, that's why Stockfish gets out of the range of the bishop. Knight to a5, castling bishop to c6. You don't mind to trade off the light square bishop for the light square bishop. That's actually not a bad choice, because after bishop takes c6, knight to c6, we don't have any more opposite colored bishops in the potential continuation of the game. We will probably try something like, I don't know, maybe b5, knight to a5, and as I said, we would simply cement our knight on a light square on c4, where the knight couldn't be attacked maybe by the dark square bishop. This wasn't the continuation, but I wanted to show you, of course, what would be the position after potential trades of the light square bishop. So here I have to move bishop to c6, now after rook to d8 and rook takes d8, here bishop to a6. You see now laser is getting out of the range of the bishop. Now laser doesn't want to go into this favorable trades of bishops for Stockfish. We have knight to b3, we have now knight to c5, cementing really here the position on dark squares. Black has here a nice central dark square grip, really great positional play by Stockfish. We have bishop to c4, knight to a4, rook to c1, and now Stockfish of course occupies the second rank, which we should do when you have reached the rook endgame. So bishop to f2, rook to b2, h4 h5, bishop to d5, bishop to d7, and again Stockfish is trying the same thing, is trying to trade off the light square bishops. We have bishop to c6, and again here Stockfish is not allowing here laser to take out the knight, go into this opposite color bishops, where the endgame would be simply too much simplified. So here bishop to c5, b takes c5, c4, we have a rook to b3, and the problem I think for laser in this position is that there are two open files. Stockfish has already occupied one of them, and even if laser maybe occupies here the d file, it's still not a problem, because here the king and the bishop are covering all of the squares. So here laser will never be able to get on the 7th rank. That's the main issue, and again I'm pointing out there are simply too many weaknesses. This a3 is still weak and the c4 is still a weakness. So here a4, a5, keeping the pawns on dark squares is now a huge position idea, because if you place many pawns on light squares, they can be of course attacked by the light square bishop. So that's why black is also a very nice strategical advantage in the endgame here. So g5, h takes g, f takes g, king f2, we have king to f1, now g4, f takes g4, bishop takes, and now simply marching with the king here, going further with the king. And the cool part is that the rook has also cut off the potential king's activity. So again I'm pointing out now this is the clear path to go after the pawns. Black's king is again much more active. So king to e1, king to g5, king to f4, bishop to d5. Here we have this check, rook to e2, king to f1, rook takes e4. You see laser is losing many pawns and even sacrificed the rook here for the bishop. Now Stockfish simply played here after move bishop to d5, and in this position laser resigns. So as I said, this is something I think worth to study, because in this particular line we're going even into more simplified lines here. Let's go back. This is now our cornerstone position. After move knight to d5, e takes d5, we have seen this problem, but also let's go back here after move here after move e4, you can also reach this position in which maybe white will trade off the queens on the d file, but now it's simply time to take with the king, because if you take with the knight you risk maybe this idea to have this knight on c7 fork. So as I said, the problems now after king to d8, b takes c3 here is not an option for white, because it weakens again the pawn structure. So as I said, it's now a comfortable game simply here for black. So okay, this was our analysis now in this types of lines. Maybe this is something for you. Maybe you want to play the Semi-Tarrasch defense like this, because I think when you maybe choose to play one particular opening like the King's Indian, Nimzo Indian, or maybe you're playing something else, I think you have to have always a surprise element, because when your opponent is preparing for you, maybe he'll see some of your games in that lines that we have analyzed before, so in our first line. So sometimes it's good to change the line a little bit, because you can really surprise your opponent without messing up your position, because this line that we have studied today is also, I think, a decent opening line and something really worth to play. So okay, I hope that you realize these ideas, and I hope that you enjoyed this video. If you want to study the Semi-Tarrasch defense more, please check out my previous analysis with our introduction video, part 1, part 2, part 3, and so on. And if you have trouble maybe to play as black against e4 and d4, check out my hyper accelerated rank Sicilian defense series and our Nimzo Indian defense series, as good responses against e4 and d4, of course. And if you like this content, don't forget to subscribe to my channel. See you soon with some more videos, and what to say, chess is the best, of course.